another special edition, another Friends of the Show edition of We're Not Wizards. And this one is going to be called I Beg Your Pardon, I Never Promised You a Herb Garden. And I know why it's called that, and you will know why it's called that, because today we have a very special guest. It's a gentleman by the name of Eduardo Baraf, who is in charge. He's has a company called Pencil First Games. He's been involved in Kickstarter for a while. You might have heard of a couple of his titles, especially the recent Heroes and Tricks. He's also been involved in Lift Off, Get Me Off This Planet as well. So, hello, Eduardo.
Hello.
How are you it's very early in this morning for you, I understand, so I appreciate.
Oh, don't worry about it. Yeah, I'm doing well. I'm doing well. How are you?
Good. Yeah, good. As I say, I'm really, really happy to kind of have you on the show, especially after I spoke recently to John Gilmore, so we obviously mentioned some of the Heroes and Tricks campaign that had successfully funded a couple of months ago.
It did, and John Gilmore is awesome.
He is, yes. He's genuinely a nice guy. He's not like one of these guys, he's nice for everybody, and then when you get him in another room, he's like, what are you looking at? He's kind of genuinely just a really, really nice guy. But for those who aren't aware, the reason that we do these podcasts is because there are quite simply not enough podcasts about board games. And there's also definitely not enough podcasts out there that are just involving two guys talking about stuff. So that's why we do it. Eduardo, for those who aren't aware of you, do you want to tell a little bit about how you got into the old cardboard jungle, how you got into board games at all?
Sure. I am extremely fortunate that I've actually been making games my entire career, but I started in video games. So
all right.
I did the whole video game thing for a very long time, and then probably in late 2000, maybe 2000, I don't know. Like as a kid, I was into American type fun, Monopoly, Stratego, Uno, your typical, fare we played back then, but and some role playing games like Dungeons and Dragons. But I hadn't been really into the big, the board game scene until I worked for a company called Mind Control Software, where there was a lot more people playing that kind of thing. And I think some of my early games were Citadel, Small World, that kind of game.
So was it kind of like a social aspect of the business? Is it what a lot of your work colleagues did? So you kind of got drawn into that.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's
kind of cool.
Yeah, and then there was a cool game store in San Rafael called Gamescape that we went to a lot. And one of the guys I worked with, Thomas Denmark, happened to be the artist and designer behind the Dungeoneer series published by Atlas Games, which is a little bit older but has a fairly large following. And he was working on a game called Murder of Crows at the time. For a variety of reasons, he was trying to refine it and wanted to improve it, and asked me if I'd work on it with him in co-design. And I hadn't made any physical stuff; I'd only made digital, but I thought it would be cool. So we made Murder of Crows together, and then Atlas Games published that title. And that's sort of how I got into both playing and making games during that period.
So, is there any games that obviously, if you're a games designer and that's your job, what kind of games do you... we have a section on the show which is called kind of get, what we got to the table. Is there anything that you're kind of playing at the moment with your group or in the house?
So one of the things I do in addition to the making games things is reviewing games. So
yes.
I tend to play a lot of games, and I tend to play a lot of, good 40% of my gaming is on prototypes either that I've put together or prototypes that people are doing for Kickstarter. But the last game I played and bought was at Gen Con, which was Potion Explosion by Cool Mini or Not. I saw people playing it at the event, and I got a little sort of half game in, and then I brought it home, and we've been playing it, and it really is fantastic.
Are you going to be doing a video about that as well? Because you've got your own YouTube channel, and you film a lot of the stuff that you're playing as well when you're doing your reviews, don't you?
Oh yeah. And I think so. I'm a little bit backed up at the moment. So I don't think it's going to happen immediately, but in the near future. But really enjoyed that game, and I expect I'll be playing it a lot.
What's the basic premise behind it? What do you do in it?
Well, they really, it's cool mini or not. So they've constructed this incredible little marble machine, and so it has a device that you build that stores about 50 marbles, and the marbles come down in troughs, like in lines. So you've got 5 lines of marbles that are slanted on an angle, so that when you pull a marble out, the back marbles move forward and fill. And essentially then it's like a video game match 3, because the way it works is you pull a marble out, and if the fill matches 2 sets of marbles, like if you've got a red between 2 sets of black, and you pull the red out and it becomes one big set of black.
You can get rid of that.
Well, you get to take it. You earn them. You pull out those marbles, and then you're filling up potions with the marbles. So it's pretty smart. I mean, they did a really cool job. So
that's pretty cool. It sounds like is there not a video game now? I'll probably get this wrong. Zuma.
Sure,
it's like, Zuma.
Zuma is
you got the big frog mouth.
It's like Zuma, but if rather than curling lines around the top and the sides, it was coming straight down at you.
Oh, cool. Okay. So is there anything else that you've been playing that's been taking up a little bit of your time, which you're playing for fun? I guess that's one of your things, is if you're playing for fun, or if you're playing to hit a deadline, or play through a prototype. Is there anything else that you're playing at the moment?
Let me see. I'm trying to think of. I've been liking sort of a blue-orange shout-out, I guess. I've been playing a lot of Vikings on Board, which is their release from Gen Con, but I got an early version of that. Yeah. And Dr. Eureka, I think is fantastic.
I've been hearing a lot of good things about Vikings on Board, which I'm kind of tempted to have a look at and kind of check out, which sounds kind of interesting. That's fine. I mean, is there any other games that you're kind of looking at yourself at all that you've thought, that kind of, I'm going to pick that up when I get my hands on it? I mean, obviously there's there's a couple of darlings going about. Everybody seems to be talking about Scythe that's come out quite recently. Oh,
Scythe is in. So I backed Scythe. So I have their like.
Did you? What level did you get?
I got the one with the art book. So the art.
Yeah. I've heard it, and is that the one with the bigger board as well?
Yeah, with the expanded board. The funny thing is though, I actually gave it to a friend of mine for the time being, because I don't know if you've actually seen it, but yes, you open that box and you're just, it's so daunting. I mean, I opened that box and I just closed it again. And so
not just now.
Yeah.
Do you know what it is? It's when you open the box and they've actually triggered the box, so it goes ah. When you open the box, you're just like, what?
Well, you have that moment, and then you just have the like, oh my god, this game is so complicated. And so what I ended up doing is I have a friend who's, I would say, more hardcore than I am, and I basically said, if he I would let him play first, and he could play with his friends and take it if he'll play it and then teach me how to play, because I just that level of depth and complexity, like another great game that sort of has a similar vibe is, I don't know if you saw Vast or familiar with Vast, which was called Trove on Kickstarter. Much simpler game than Scythe, but it's asymmetrical. So you actually open it up, and all the different characters have like their own instructions, and it's like, man. Even Potion Explosion is a good example. Like, one of the things I'll point out in my Kickstarter, you open the box, there's actually about a 30-minute setup on Potion Explosion. Like, another one in that category is Rampage or Terror in Meeple City. I don't know if you've played that one.
I've got that.
Yeah,
I think that was one of,
they need to, I mean, they would never put the warning on the box, but basically, usually people expect to be able to open a game and like play it.
Yeah.
That game, you can't,
You're getting into kind of Eurogame territory, because that's one of, I mean, it's like trying to set up Arkham Horror, or a proper role-playing game where you got to sit down for a couple of hours just to get the kind of the game going. I think I play Rampage, or Terror in Meeple City, I think it's called now, quite a bit with the kids. And the dauntingness, or the thing that puts them off, is it's not a game of, oh, we've got half an hour, let's play Rampage. It's a case of you have to sit down if you've maybe got an hour and a half to kind of get it set up.
Yeah.
And you end up kind of taking your time. Because if you don't take your time and you rush it through, you end up thinking, it took longer to set up the game than it did to kind of play the game. I mean, is that something? Is the simplicity of setup and play? Is that something that's kind of driven you in your own kind of game designing? I mean, we might as well touch on that, because obviously one of the reasons that I got in contact with you is because you're on the top 10 hit list of people I'd like to speak to. No, it's not like that.
Thank you.
But no, I mean, I have Liftoff, Get Me Off This Planet, which is a delightful looking game. There's obviously Heroes and Tricks, which I've seen as well, but they all seem to follow a similar theme, which your games seem to come across as something that are very, very simple to get to the table and get set up, but then actually learning the individual strategies is this thing that kind of keeps you coming back and playing, especially with like Liftoff. I mean, is that something? I mean, because you strike me as that kind of accessibility is quite important to you. Is that the kind of the case with the games that you've put together?
I think that's very important, and it's something I consider important. I don't know how much it comes up right at the beginning when I'm thinking about what I'm going to do next. More importantly, I mean, I like enjoying games with people, and like my family, people who play games, people who don't play games. So, most of the stuff that I do is somewhat family friendly. And sometimes, in the case of Liftoff or Gem Pack Cards or even the Siblings Trouble, look like perhaps kids' games or games just to play with your family solo. But from my perspective, I mean, I play those games with adult groups too. I mean, I just like games that are welcoming and well made and pretty and draw you in. And so I think that drawing in is the accessibility you're talking about?
Yeah, I mean, it's important because one of the things that you see is, in terms of welcoming design, there's a lot of games I've seen recently on Kickstarter which they've seemed to have used the kind of the brown and the grey palette, and it's all quite serious, and it's almost like it's the Christopher Nolan version of board games, kind of thing. It looks quite technical, they look quite serious, they look quite grown up. And when you have something like, say, the games that you're doing, they seem to be, it's like you have just eaten about 4 bags of Skittles and then you just went mad. That's something that you can notice. You can, Get Me Off This Planet, very, very, a lot of decent colour, very, very kind of striking, simple but colourful designs. And then obviously you can say, oh, potentially looks like a kid's game, but when you get to the table, you can realise there's a little bit of depth that's kind of there. I mean, obviously with the Kickstarter side of things, is Kickstarter going to be the continued route that you are intending to kind of go down then? I mean, how have you found the Kickstarter process yourself?
Well, without a doubt, Kickstarter allowed me to not only make Liftoff, but also start, doing the board game business. And the Liftoff had actually been something I had submitted to publishers over a 2 or 3 year period and didn't gain traction, and had sort of set down. And then, after the Kickstarter scene picked up, a couple of people who had played it, who were on that side of the business, really said, hey, you should make that into a Kickstarter. And then I wanted to do the Siblings Trouble first, but they were like, no, man, you got to make Liftoff. Okay. And, so one, I mean, I'm super indie, right? Like it's awesome that you've played those games, but you sort of have to be in smaller, segment of the gaming space to have seen my stuff. I mean, they're in retail, right, but not in huge volumes. And so, from a business perspective, I mean, none of these games have shot off so much money that I could ever just take a new game and sort of make it independently. So, I mean, I am, Herbaceous is on Kickstarter. Everything that I'm looking to line up next year is going to be on Kickstarter. I think it is going to be a major part of what Pencil First Games does for a long time. But at the same time, if we ever had a hit or something that sort of took off above and beyond the, fulfill Kickstarter, maybe an additional print type of thing, I wouldn't have a problem trying just to go direct. But I also enjoy Kickstarter. I mean, I try to run good Kickstarters and engaging Kickstarters.
One of the things you notice is there's Kickstarter campaigns where you feel that it's not. People sometimes feel it's a bit kind of field of dreams, where they think if they they put the stuff up and they put the video up and then they just press go and then everything should work. But I think one of the things that struck me about the Liftoff Kickstarter was that it was presented very, very well, but you were also very, very involved with keeping people up to date. And this was obviously not just a case of you were. There was a lot of work that was obviously going into to kind of actively kind of build up a community and actively kind of build up the interest, which was quite good. I mean, I guess people I've previously we've spoken to kind of Jeffrey Greer, he was, I guess, you maybe 3-4 years ago, because he's done his first or his second Kickstarter, and he's kind of obviously going to be trying to build up the business, and he sees obviously Kickstarter as the kind of the way forward. Kickstarter itself is obviously a very, very good place. I mean, one of the things we do bring up here is there are obviously the bigger companies like Cool Mini or Not a Your Worlds that use Kickstarter as almost like a pre-order kind of basis as well. I mean,
I'm still at the. I mean, it does change a little as you go, but I'm the Kickstarter community. When I run a Kickstarter, every single note, every single email, every single update I'm doing, right? There's me, at 6 a.m. in the morning reading all that stuff. And I think that it's just so important to be engaged in doing it. And so, there's just, there's no way Herbaceous, for example, either that campaign is successful or we don't get to make the game. And so it's really important to do them well and build an audience. And so it's really a huge part of it. It's not like a small part of my business. I mean, the Kickstarter work and prep and engagement is almost as much work as making the game.
Well, you're not just launching. I mean, obviously, Herbaceous has been around for a little while, and you've been building up the noise as well, in terms of getting the kind of the word out there. I mean, let's talk about Herbaceous.
Sure.
Because Herbaceous it's about herbs, isn't it? I mean,
yeah.
And the artwork is. We'll put the link. Obviously, we'll put the link to in the show notes to the campaign, so people can have a look at this, and obviously your Facebook page and such like. But Herbaceous is striking in its illustration. But what is it about? If you want to, tell us about what do you do in Herbaceous?
Herbaceous is on to describe it in sort of gamer terms. Herbaceous is a push your luck set collection game, but really what you're doing in the game is you're planting herbs, and there's a whole variety of them, like mint, thyme, lavender, dill. The list goes on, and you're going to be planting the herbs, and you plant them in a community region on the table, or in your own private garden. So in the community garden, your private garden, and there's this little. Have you ever played Biblios?
I haven't, no.
Oh, okay. Well, that's a great game. So Herbaceous is actually designed by Steve Finn, who also designed Biblius and many other countless games. But he,
All right.
when you draw an herb, you look at the first one and you decide, should I keep this for myself or put it in the middle? And whatever you decide, the opposite happens. So, do you take what you have, what you know, or do you look at what you don't know? And so on every turn, everyone's doing that. And then the other thing they get to do is each player has 4 pots that require different types of set. One pot requires all the same herb. One is all different. One is pears. One is sort of anything, but you can put these special herbs in it. And the more you put in those pots, the more they're worth at the end of the game. But you can only do it once. So basically the dynamics of the game are this little micro decision on, do I keep the herb or do I place it? But more importantly, the community pot in the middle is growing and growing, and everybody wants what's in the middle. Yeah. But they're waiting to see if they can get the most points. But if I wait a turn, you're going to take your turn, and anyone else. It's 2 to 4 players, so the third player could take their turn, or the fourth player, and they might take what I wanted. So it's sort of like, do I want to do 3 identical saffrons, or do I want to try to wait around and get 4 or 5, depending on what happens? But while I wait, somebody else might take the saffron from the community garden. So it's very easy. I mean, it's really fast play and easy to play. And so Herbaceous was inspired by the art. Beth Sobel's. It's like, it is amazing art. I mean, again, it's not. It's soft art. It's not like it's not like a guy with a sword jumping off the card, right?
No, but there's not black kind of pen lines around every single piece as well. It's the color's very, very it's very, very gentle.
Yeah, they're super gentle, right? And but just they're just wonderful. And actually, Beth had made a reskin for Bonanza. I don't know if you've played Bonanza, but it's this game about beans with really silly bean characters on it. And she just made it. She thought she didn't like it, or she wanted to do a different version. So she actually remade that game with this herb art. And I saw it, and I said, "Hey, what's that?" She posted it on board game group, right? And I said, "Hey, what is that?" And she's like, "Oh, I just did this reskin for Bonanza." I'm like, "Is it going into a new game?" She's like, "Nah." And so I sort of reached out there and I said, if I had a game design or game together, would you be willing to allow for us to use that art? Yeah. And maybe do a couple more. And she was sort of like, "You mean art that looks like this art?" And I was like, "No, that art." So I would say that was probably 70% of the pieces we ended up using were in that original set. Some of it got put into we have a Kickstarter exclusive flavor pack, because some of the original art, like one thing she did was cinnamon, and cinnamon isn't an herb, it's a bark. So it's part of the flavor pack as opposed to being part of Herbaceous. But anyway.
All right, okay.
But so, it's that 8 to 88 feel, like a game I can play with my mom, who really doesn't play games, or it's sort of that sit at the window while drinking tea game. When I first picked it up, prior to bringing Steve in to take on the design, I was actually working on I was trying to do a solitaire design with it. But man, that's a hard design. You have to really love solitaire. I've never worked on a solitaire game, so I was sort of banging my head against trying to make fun solitaire. And this, if you don't know if you don't know how to have fun with solitaire, like in the inside of your heart, I think it's a hard thing to do on your. Anyway, so then I reached Steve, and I had wanted to work together, and I said, "Hey, Steve, I got this stuff. What do you think?" And then he put together the Herbaceous design.
And so, I mean, is it more? I mean, it strikes me as it's almost quite gateway, as in it's something that you would be able to say, "Let's play Herbaceous," and folk would go, "What?" And you'd say, tell you what, here's the cards.
Oh, yeah. The cards, I mean, this is, I used to call Liftoff Gateway, and, I've come to the conclusion that Liftoff isn't Gateway. This is Gateway. Liftoff is Gateway in a world where you're bringing somebody in to play Ticket to Ride, or you're bringing somebody into, you already inherently sitting down at a board with stuff on it that's different and like, you know.
Yeah, they've done the love letter kind of thing. They've already played that. They've maybe played, they've maybe tried a little bit of Catan, but that's I saw Liftoff as that was where that was, but it was also anyone that was slightly interested in something simple-ish.
Yeah, you got to be
them in.
But it wasn't truly simple, and
No.
right, and I think Herbaceous, again, both because of the game play, but also because of the art, you can just show it to people and they're curious. One of the things at at First Exposure Play Hall, we was at Gen Con. I said, hey, I'm looking for some multi-generational players. You get to tell them what kind of testers you want, and they'll try to get it. And so they had this mother, I don't want to guess her age, but older mother, probably a 22, 25-year-old woman, and then her aunt. And they walked in and they're like, just so you know, the only games we play are, like Bridge and Monopoly or something, right?
It's like, this is perfect. Let me just go and grab the little dog and the car and the top hat, and I'll be right back.
No, it was perfect, and they loved the game. And again, I think there is that Bridge crowd, that is that Canasta crowd, that it really is just draw and group, and there aren't lots of moving parts, and it can be explained. So that I really wanted to have that type of game, and I don't think there are enough of them, actually.
No.
So I'm super excited about it.
I think there's the complication to try for, if you're maybe trying to develop a Kickstarter game, is to go Scythe, kind of complicated maybe, and make it look a lot of kind of different moving parts, I guess. As opposed to, as opposed to kind of going for something that could be kind of entry. But I would encourage anybody that hasn't. Well, I'd encourage anybody to have a look at the artwork on Herbaceous anyway, because even if you're a seasoned kind of board game player, I'm not sure you're going to really have seen anything kind of close to it. I mean, in terms of how it looks and stuff like that, it's very, very unusual, and it certainly kind of caught my eye. I mean, obviously the Kickstarter is pretty much imminent at the moment. What are you? I mean, have you got a price? I mean, have you got a price point for what you're putting up for? Yeah.
The game is going to be $19, and that'll have ship in the U.S. and then there's additional ship for outside of the U.S. And we're going to be EU friendly. This may be my last campaign being EU friendly. I'm working through the reality of Brexit and what that means for EU friendly at the moment. But
well, I think at the moment what it means is that a Kickstarter that used to be $100 Kickstarter used to be £60, basically, if you looked at it that way.
Sure.
And now a $100 Kickstarter is probably closer to maybe about 80, 85.
Oh wow!
So I mean, it's probably not as much. Well, once you put the shipping and everything like that. So for a lot of people that I know that were Kickstarting on a regular basis, the normal kind of, I guess, the kind of your Cool Mania or Nots of this world and Mantics and stuff like that, they're sticking stuff up at, is $100. That isn't as kind of easy to justify, to say, okay, I'm going to be spending almost £85 on a board game, because it's becoming an awful lot of money. So we'll see. The Brexit side of things isn't probably going to have, the exchange rate is definitely having an effect on people that are maybe buying from overseas.
In addition to just the price, the dollars, the way that EU friendly shipping works is you work with a partner in Europe to distribute within Europe, but that's all around a lot of the shipping stuff that's based on sort of how the EU has worked previously. So there's just a little unknown right now, right? And so, you don't want to commit to something in a Kickstarter and then find yourself.
Not to get. We don't want to get into the big politics of it, but there's been people have said what they want to do, and then we're still waiting for stuff to happen, which has led to a bit of uncertainty. So
yeah, I'm just talking about. There's just the uncertainty, but anyway, it'll be $19. The game will you'll get the full Herbaceous game, and then there'll also be the Kickstarter mini expansion that's included with it.
And that's only, that works out. It was only about £15 anyway, so £16. So it's not. Let's face it. In the grand scheme of things, that amount of money for a decent, unusual, and very, very accessible card game is going to be, isn't very much money at all.
I'd like to think so.
Is it just cards, or are there other components involved?
It's just cards. There are a few components that I have as stretch goals, but we have to fund to meet them for them to unlock. But yeah, it'll come in a nice box with it's more than it's not a thing. It's like almost 2 decks of cards,
cool.
And and instructions and all that stuff.
Okay. Do you have as I say, we'll post the link in the show notes to Herbaceous. I think you've already got the preview kind of campaign. Any links that you give us to link to the website, sure. Stuff like that. We'll obviously, if you're interested in that, I would advise you, even if it doesn't sound like your bag, to go and take a look at it, because it is I think people are going to be pleasantly surprised when they have a little look. Should be quite,
if it's not your bag, just show it to your mom. See if it's her bag.
Show it to anybody. It's interesting. It'll be interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. In terms of kind of like going forward, have you got a raft of ideas now for game designs that have you just got sitting there? You said earlier on that one of the things that you do is 40% of your time is usually spent kind of prototyping. Is there? Do you follow kind of like when you're designing? Are you following the kind of the lots and lots of white bits of paper and then just see how they land, or do you have some very, very set ideas about where you're going with your designs?
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't. I like working with people and following inspiration. So I don't actually have a large design agenda. Mm-hmm. What typically. It's about following opportunity and excitement and things to do, right? Herbaceous is a great example of that, right? Heroes and Tricks was on my list. Heroes and Tricks was a game that I thought of, and then I was working on, and then I got to start working with John Gilmore on it. That was super cool. He did some incredible design work on it. Herbaceous, again, was, oh my, holy moly, that is so beautiful, that art. Wow. That's not on a game? Could I make it a game? Oh, cool. Yeah. How am I going to get this done? And maybe, there's this other. So it was very, it came together, and it fit some things that I wanted to do in terms of I wanted to have a game that sort of fit that 8 to 88 category and wanted to get into that kind of space. But at the same time, it certainly wasn't the case that I had it on my roadmap, so to speak.
Yeah, it wasn't on the kind of the tick-off list games I want to design before I die.
And so
must have herbs.
Yeah, and so, but it was serendipitous, and it's wonderful, and I'm really happy with it. I think the, in coming in the next year, I have, let's see. So I'm working on, sort of a take on sort of Murder of Crows with Thomas again. I'm have a game called Fantastic Creatures, which I'm working on with Chris Ham, who designed Strife. I'm what else? There's a design of sort of my next design as me the designer looks to be Vineyard, which I'm that's like, these are all working names, right? But which I think is going to be actually the extension of Liftoff. The mechanics, I think, are going to be going to have some similarities to Liftoff, but maybe not with the vineyard exploding. But like,
Yeah.
I think some of the gameplay elements.
Just imagine that.
Yeah.
Is there a miniature game? Is there an Eduardo Baraf miniature game kind of kicking about in your head which you'd like to get to the table, or are you?
In a best case scenario, I think the characters in Vineyard end up looking like the characters in Takenoko.
Okay.
I guess you could see. I see a game perhaps that has a few miniatures.
Yeah. Okay.
The most core game I'm working on right now is it's not a Pencil First Games game, but I'm working on a tentatively called Heroes Welcome. I think the game may change its name, but Marco Blanc has this fantastic design he's been working on, and Thomas Denmark again is doing the art, but I'm good at making things and getting things done, and so they had been working on it, but maybe it wasn't sort of moving as fast as they'd like, or getting into how do we actually make it, how do we build it, how do we like the development and production work. And so I had worked with both of those guys as a producer in video games, and so and we're all friends, but they asked me for my help, so I'm also helping with that title. But that title is probably the closest to like more. It's not just more like mid-core, gamer type of game. Most of my stuff is more family, gamer / family gamer, board game. You know what I mean? It doesn't. Heroes Welcome is like getting into that, what you'd think in that miniature space. It's not like Blood Rage, right? But like it's fantasy. Like it's that darker palette, but it's going to have fun. We brought in Dustin Faust, to the guy who did the character work in Heroes and Tricks, which is like amazing.
Yeah, he is. Yeah.
Into the game, so it's going to have a levity to it. I mean, I guess in some ways I like games that have some levity. Murder of Crows is pretty gothic, but anyway.
Yeah, but everything else has always been quite, as I said, it's always been quite inviting, as opposed to looking at it and saying, oh look, there's a big huge guy with muscles and a sword and blood and guts and darkness.
Some people like that. If you want to be in that space, I don't. I worked at Disney. I've always. I don't mind color. I don't mind fun. I don't mind brightness. My big thing mostly is just make it look consistent. Like if you're gonna go for dark, make it feel good and dark. If you're gonna make it colorful, but the games that sort of end up being a mishmash of different things, those are the ones that I tend not to like visually. But if you go for it, then and you nail what you're trying to do, what your style, even if it's abstract, I mean, whatever it is, I tend to like it.
Would you ever consider going back into video games? Obviously, you sound like you've got contacts in the industry, and it looks like the video game space is, as soon as someone does something different, there's massive kind of interest in it. Has that ever kind of attracted you again? Have you ever thought, have you done the video game thing now, and you're quite happy kind of, I guess, kind of being in control of what you're doing, I guess?
Okay. Let me answer that in a few different ways. Pencil First Games has in fact released a few mobile games. We released Gem Pact, which is an iOS game, and Monkeys Ahoy. But, I don't, for sort of Pencil First Games, which, I mean, is just a side business, right? It's mostly hobby plus, because, I have to have a full-time job that actually, pays for me and my family. But
don't we all? This is why we're talking at this particular time in the morning stroke afternoon.
Yeah, but so I am, as far as me independently doing video games, it's not that high on my list. I've just been enjoying board games more. I like the space, and I like what it's about, and arguably it's easier, but I just enjoy it more. Professionally, I'm currently in the first job that is not gaming specific,
all right.
And and it's been a nice balance between getting the creative juices out on the board game side, and then I work in educational VR right now, professionally.
That would be quite cool.
Oh, it's super cool. It's super cool. But so, I'm happy in my current job. But if I get to the point where that doesn't work out or whatever, and I'm looking again, I mean, the video game space is going to be, one of the ones I'm looking at. So, I think I expect I'm going to make another game in my career. I'm pretty sure on the video game side, but generally speaking, on the side stuff, I like doing the board game.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting that the technologically more advanced kind of gaming space and video gaming has kind of removed or almost removed the kind of the social aspect to the game to actually playing alongside somebody side by side, which if you know anybody that kind of was ever grew up playing a Super Nintendo or a Mega Drive, they would have, couch kind of co-op. Whereas the board games seem to still be, it's a brilliant social kind of...
I think that's why they're doing so well. I mean, among other reasons, but I think that's a part of it.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay. In terms of kind of like... Obviously, you're very, very active on YouTube. You do a lot of videos. You seem to keep kind of involved in the industry kind of that way. Where if people want to find you, where can they find you?
I'm really easy to find. If you go to Twitter, at ebaraf, E as in Ed, B as in boy, ARAF as in Frank.
Okay. I'll put a link in the show notes. So.
I'm pretty responsive. I mean, so if you're curious, you have a question, you want to learn about something, if you tweet at me, there's a pretty high chance I tweet back pretty quickly. On Facebook, you can check out Facebook/Pencil First Games, and that'll link to each of the Facebook games for the games. And then you can just go to pencilfirstgames.com. But I'm pretty active on Twitter and I'm pretty active on Facebook. So those are two good places. And I sort of, for better or for worse, about 2 years ago or 3 years ago, allowed Facebook to be industry and family as opposed to just family. So, I don't mind talking and discussing and getting contacted on sort of the board game space via Facebook. Whereas when there was a period where it was like, if you're not my family, I'm not going to friend you or anything like that. But now it's sort of, I've relinquished that restriction, and so I talk to lots of people. But so either of those are good ways. But Twitter's a real easy way to reach out to somebody.
It's kind of I mean, that's how we've kind of spoke a couple of times, and obviously we've mentioned Liftoff before. We've got the Herbaceous coming out. Sounds like you're kind of very, very busy. Kind of a lot of stuff going to be appearing in the future. We'll make sure, obviously, that there's a lot of information in the show notes for this one. So if you do want to, obviously follow Eduardo, find out what he's up to, and obviously check out the Herbaceous campaign, then please do that. If you want to keep in touch with what we're doing, you can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/We're Not Wizards. You can always find us on Twitter, which is obviously we're at We're Not Wizards as well. We've now taken the jump into Instagram, so we put photographs up as well of the games that we've been playing, and you can email us at magic@we'renotwizards as well. I just want to say thank you very, very much for your time today, because I know it's obviously short, and I know that, as I say, we've both got kind of job commitments that we've got to now kind of finish off and sort out. So I appreciate the time that you've taken with us at the moment. I think the main thing is, obviously, remember that we are many things, but we're certainly not wizards. Are we wizards, Eduardo?
Certainly not.
Definitely not. Get out, wizards. But again, thank you very much for your time today, Eduardo. And we'll again check out the show notes for this Herbaceous, which sounds fantastic. Until then, do you want to say goodbye?
Have a great evening or morning or whatever time it is for you.
I know. I was gonna sing an outro, but I was going to go, what do you do when you're wanting some herbs in an American country garden? But it didn't work. So I think it's time we just go. Okay.
Talk to you later.
Let's go to the sunlight. Okay. Anyway. Okay, so that's a bye from me and a bye from Eduardo.
Bye.
Bye.